Hallo und herzlich willkommen zu unserer nächsten Session auf unserem Surview Festival. Ich freue mich ganz besonders, heute hier jemand von Excelos begrüßen zu dürfen, nämlich den Luis Ruberio, Brand Manager bei Excelos für das Thema ITIL. Und der Excelos hat auf den Markt gebracht ein eigenes Maturity Modell, nach dem man Reifegrade und Kompetenzen in ITIL-Organisationen messen kann. Und das wird uns der Luis heute mal vorstellen. Die ganze Session wird auf Englisch sein und daher werden wir auch gleich auf Englisch switchen. Ganz kurz für Sie noch zum Housekeeping. Fragen können Sie natürlich durchgehend in der Session stellen, einfach in das Fragenmodul reintippen und ich werde dafür sorgen, dass der Luis die bis zum Ende auch entsprechend beantworten wird. So, jetzt gucken wir mal, wer da ist. Hi Luis, do you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you, and I hope you can hear me, and now you can see me.
Now we can see you. Great to have you here in our session, Luis. Thank you that you take the time. And yeah, we heard that you said to me that you had a little bit of emergency case last night with your daughter. So it doesn't mind it. Perhaps if you hear your daughter in the background, I think that's the situation what we all have at the home office right now.
Yeah, excellent. Thank you for the understanding. And also, if you see a little bit of a sleepy face, just it was a difficult night with dealing with them. Nevertheless, with all 100% energy to share with everybody more about the ITIL Maturity Model.
Yes, we know it. So I have give a short introduction what we will see. So I will give you the rights to share your screen. And then we can start. I will take a look at the questionnaires. So when we get any questions, we handle this at the end of your presentation. So
excellent.
Have fun. And I'm very curious what you have to show to us. Thanks.
Excellent. And just to confirm, I believe you can see my screen right now, correct?
Yes, we see it. Everything is perfect.
Okay, good. So, well, first of all, again, hello everybody, and thank you for joining this session. Today we're going to speak more about the ITIL Maturity Model, something very new in ITIL, but something very exciting as well that we recently launched a few months ago, even weeks ago. But first of all, I want to introduce myself. My name is Luis Rivero, as Marcus mentioned. I'm regional brand manager at Excelos for the EMEA region. What does it mean? It means my role focuses on engaging with end clients, organizations, and corporates, governments, and make sure that they understand the benefits of best practice and adopt more of that best practice. Our idea behind is that the more organizations follow the best practice, the more productive, the more effective they can be in the future. So as you know, I work for Excelos, that has been recently acquired by a company called PeopleCert. So about these two companies, we are the owners, but I prefer to say we are the custodians of the best practice products. When I say best practice products means any guidance, frameworks, methods in specific fields, such as IT service management, like ITIL, but also in project management, Prince2, program management, MSP, portfolio management, MOP, and others. And as I said, best practice provide that guidance, that framework, that method for organizations and individuals to follow, and as I said, be more efficient, more effective, and more productive in their work. So today, I'm here to tell you more about the ITIL Maturity Model, which is something very new in ITIL. But before we go into the detailed maturity model, I want to speak a bit more about continual improvement as an introduction. Then I will specifically refer to the ITIL Maturity Model, and it has two types of assessments. And then finally, we're going to see what are the benefits, why an organization should go for an ITIL Maturity Model. This presentation is going to take around 25 minutes. And then at the end, we can have any questions that you might have. So let's get started. And we speak about a maturity model, which is tends to be linked to an assessment or a maturity assessment. And why assess is important in ITIL. Why in ITIL we speak about assessment. So that's very important to clarify in order for you to know why we have created a maturity model, a maturity assessment. So I'm going to briefly go through certain concepts of ITIL 4. Again, I'm not going to tell you every single concept of ITIL 4. I'm just going to have a very brief few seconds overview just to highlight certain things in these concepts. I believe most of you are familiar with the service value system, which is everything that you need in an organization to convert demand into value. And something interesting is that this concept, or one of the key components of the service value system, is continuous improvement. So continuous improvement has been always in ITIL v3 and now in ITIL 4 extremely important. But let's go to another concept of ITIL 4, service value chain, which, as you know, that's the engine. That's where all the specific activities happen to convert that demand into value, supported by the practices, of course. Here in the service value chain, we also speak about improvement, or continuous improvement. So one of the components here. So you can see we start seeing a pattern that most of the concepts in ITIL 4, and not only ITIL, in other frameworks, always refer to improvement. And even if we go beyond, we speak about practices, there is one particular practice that speaks about continuous improvement. So we see continuous improvement is everywhere in ITIL, it's everywhere in ITIL service management, because it's always present in other frameworks. So this is to highlight why continuous improvement is important. So let's now look at more detail what we refer to when we speak about improvement. ITIL suggests a continuous improvement model. So let's go briefly to speak about that continuous improvement model, and then you will see the link with assessments, with specifically why we have an ITIL maturity assessment. So this is the continuous improvement model, where initial organization sets up a vision, a long-term objective they want to achieve. After that, they have to assess where they are today, what resources they have, what capabilities they have, and so on. After that, knowing how they are today, where they are today, they can decide what objectives they want to achieve in specific time frame. It could be 6 months, 1 year, 3 years, and so on. Knowing that the vision is normally a 10 years is a long-term objective. When those objectives are defined, then it's about the strategy and the tactics. How I'm going to achieve those objectives. What do I need to do in order to get to those objectives? And the next step is to take action, basically the action plan, all the specific activities, how I bring in that strategy and those tactics into practice in order to get to my objectives. And then finally, an overview or analysis. Did we get there? Did we achieve those objectives? And then it's a cycle, then it keeps the momentum going and going through the cycle again. So if we go to this second step, because as we know, the vision is something that you don't do in a monthly basis. It's something that definitely you can shape it from time to time, but it's normally a long-term overview that you define in a specific period of time, but it's going to be very much your vision for the next 5 or 10 years. As I said, you can reshape it, you can adjust it, but it's unlikely you're going to change it very often. So then the second step is, where are we now? So that's the assessment. What capabilities, what resources, what do I have in my organization today? And that's where the ITIL maturity model plays a role, because we're bringing a tool, we're bringing a model that is going to help organizations define where are they currently. And that's critical, that's key in order to define their objectives. So that's why in ITIL, in Axelos, what we defined was, yeah, we have a framework ITIL, and we have a lot of programs. When I say programs, is training courses with books and exams, etc. But we want to make sure that we're bringing the most to those corporates and those governments. So that's why we said, yeah, we need to allow, especially consultants, to have a tool that are going to help organizations define where they are now. And that's what ITIL maturity refers to. That's what ITIL maturity is all about. So now, having this introduction and that understanding of why we created an ITIL maturity model or an ITIL maturity assessment, let's go and speak more about the ITIL maturity assessment. But before that, something that happens in organization often is that they don't do an assessment. They just go straight from vision to objectives. They just don't bother or don't have the time or resources to do an assessment. And what happens with organizations is at some point they will find out that they're not meeting their objectives. So they have to go back and start looking into assessments to identify what areas they're not good at that is stopping them from achieving objectives. So ideally, we want organizations to assess and then set up objectives. But as I said, in some cases, organizations, they just go straight to objectives. And that's something that they shouldn't do, because the best practice is get an understanding where you are now, basically do an assessment. Good. So now let's speak about ITIL Maturity Model. Just let me close the door not to have some background noise. And let me tell you more about this model that we launched a few months ago. That was in September, 2-3 months ago. So before we speak about the ITIL Maturity Model, let's define what is maturity. And normally in my slides, I don't like to have definitions or text, but I think this one was quite important to have it, because it clearly showed that maturity is a measure, basically a KPI, that is going to provide an indication of the organization's ability to deliver results, including how quickly they can achieve those results, how productive or how efficient they can be, the quality of those results, and the customer satisfaction. So basically, it shows me how mature my organization is. It shows me if I have a high level of maturity, it means that I'm being productive, that my products are high quality and the processes are high quality, that the customers are satisfied. If my maturity is low, that will be the opposite. And it has been proven scientifically that the more mature organization is, the more success that organization is going to have. That was back in the 80s when the US government started introducing the concept of maturity assessments or maturity levels. And that's because they discovered by a lot of research that organizations that have high maturity are more likely to deliver high quality products and of course have more customer satisfaction. So that's why maturity is important, because the more mature as an organization is, the more likely customers are going to be satisfied and the quality of the products are going to be high. So this ITIL maturity model is going to help organizations define the level of maturity where they are today. And then based on that, as I said, they can arrange and set up objectives. So the ITIL maturity model has two types of assessments. One is a capability assessment, and the other one is maturity assessment. Those two assessments are part of the model. So we have an ITIL maturity model that it has basically two assessments, where we're assessing two different things. One is capability, one is maturity. I will go to speak about each of them in a second, and then you will understand what do we refer to when we speak about capability and what do we refer to when we speak about maturity. And you will also see that they are interconnected. But it's important to highlight that the model that we built basically creates that differentiation. It gives the option for organization to look into capability only, maturity only, or both combined. So let's start by capability assessment. What do we mean by capability assessment? For that, we need to refer to a concept of ITIL 4, which is the ITIL practices. And for the ones not familiar with ITIL 4, which I believe all of you are already familiar with ITIL 4, ITIL practice is the evolution from the ITIL processes in ITIL v3. And the capability assessment basically assess how well the organization is using these practices. As simple as that. Of course, we have 34 practices, so it will be very long and a lot of work for organization to assess those 34 practices. And that's why the model provides the option for the organization to define which practices they want to assess. So let me tell you how it works. You have a set of 34 practices. An organization is going to define what are the practices that they want to be assessed. Very likely to be the 34 of them, but it could be. But they might say, you know what, we define 5 key practices, let's say service desk, incident management, problem management, availability management, and so on, and some supporting practices, which are practices that are going to go into the assessment, but they are not as important as the primary ones. Once an organization defines those practices, the scope of the practice that they want to be assessed, a consultant who is going to be using the ITIL Maturity tool will go and will conduct the assessment using a tool, asking certain questions, trying to get certain evidence, and the consultant will be able to provide an indication, or actually no, a measure, that's the right word, of each of the practices at what level they are between level 1 and level 5. The consultant who is doing this work is going to use a tool that we in Axel have created, but that's a tool that we provide to the consultants. So that's a weapon that the consultant is going to use, but all the work is going to be carried out by the consultant, and the organization is going to have the interface or the face-to-face contact with the consultant. And sometimes the question that we have is, great that you have a tool, but how do I ensure that the tool is properly measuring the success of my practice? If we speak about incident management, how as a client, as a person interested in maturity models, how are you going to convince me or to let me know that that tool is going to properly assess that practice in my organization? And that's basically something very important. And let me explain how we're doing this. First of all, we know that we have 34 practices in ITIL. And when you go and read those practices, each practice has what we call practice success factors, or PSF. And that's basically what the practice needs in order to fulfill its purpose. So what we did was we identify each of the PSFs, and we define capability criteria for those PSF. And that capability criteria is mapped against the 4 dimensions service management. What does it mean? It means that the tool that the consultant is using is not going to assess only a process, how you're dealing with incidents. It's going to assess also organizations and people, partners and suppliers, and information and technology, the 4 dimensions of service management. So this tool goes beyond processes. It really provides a holistic overview of how well the organization is using that particular practice or the set of practices. This is actually a screenshot of the tool that a normal consultant will be using to conduct those assessments, because as I said, this is a work that is going to be carried out by a consultant in your organization. And I will tell you more about who and what type of consultants can conduct that work for you. I'll tell you that at the end. But if you see the tool that the consultant is using, you will have certain tags in gray that you see on top of each statement. That tag refers to the particular dimension of service management that is assessing. And in some cases, you have maybe 5 or 6 statements with one particular dimension of service management. So as I said, it's important to highlight that it's not only processes, it's the 4 dimensions of service management that are going to be assessed. Now, great to speak about assessment, but what are you going to get as a client out of that assessment? You're going to get a measure of a level for each practice, and a level it goes between level 1 and level 5, which is very well aligned with what other maturity models are in the marketplace. Apologies that I have here the definition in Spanish. I didn't change it before the session. I'm sorry about that. But basically, level 1 shows that it's not organized. Level 2 shows that it's slowly getting to the objective, but still not organized. Level 3 says that it's defined and meets the purpose. Level 4 says it meets the purpose, and the performance is slowly improving slowly. And then level 5 speaks about the capabilities being continually improving from time to time. So, as I said, that's the result that you as a client you will get. You will get an indication of the level between 1 and 5. But it's not only a number that you're going to get. You're not going to say, okay, conduct assessment, you're at level 3. The consultant will also help you understand how you are today compared to your competition. Why? Because we're going to have benchmark data to compare. I have to be honest and transparent. We don't have it today because the tool is very new. So we need more entries in order to create that benchmark data. But in the future, in the coming months, the consultant is going to be able to tell you, look, in service request management, you are better than the competitors. And that's extremely good because it will help you actually define what type of objectives you need to define and to achieve. In addition to that, the consultant is going to provide an action plan. So getting to a number, assessing today, that's great. Number 3, level 3, level 4. But the consultant, as part of their work, they're going to also provide how to maintain that level, how to improve that level. They're going to help you also set up the objectives that you need. So the output that you get is not only a number, a level, it's also a lot of work of consultancy that the consultant will provide. So that's capability assessment. And in a nutshell, is an assessment that helps organization identify how well they're using the ITIL 4 practices. But as I said, there is another assessment in the ITIL maturity model, which is the maturity assessment. So let's go to have a look at that assessment, and then you will see how they are interconnected. So to speak about maturity, it's a bigger term. It's not only looking at practices, it looks at the overall view of the organization. And in order to speak about maturity, we're referring to this concept of ITIL 4, the service value system. Why? Because the service value system, an easy definition of the service value system is everything that I need in an organization to convert demand into value. Yeah, we all know that service value chain supported by the practices is the key part, but I also need a layer of continual improvement, a layer of governance, and a layer of guiding principles. So what we did in order to define the maturity assessment, we are taking these 5 components of the service value system, and those 5 components are going to be the 5 areas, the 5 perspectives that I'm using to assess the maturity of the organization. The same way that is in capability, the tool is going to provide me a set of statements, or going to provide the consultant with a set of statements that are going to allow him or her identify what level of maturity the organization has. Something that you might notice is that one of those components is practices. And when we spoke about capability, we said that capability assessment was assessing the practices. So whatever score somebody gets in the practices will fit into the practices here in maturity. So in different words, capability assessment is part of the maturity assessment. So the capability assessment is just one component, one part of the overall maturity assessment. But as we know, practices are extremely important in organizations. That's why we separated that and we gave them one particular assessment for those. Now, one of the most important things that I'm going to say today is the following. As we have seen, this work behind the ITIL maturity model has a lot of ITIL 4 elements. We speak about practices, service value system, 4-dimensional service management. But I want to reemphasize that this is an ITSM tool. This is ITSM assessment. An organization can be ITIL v3, ITIL v2, or can be using another IT service management framework. And this ITIL maturity model is still relevant and can assess the maturity of that organization. So this is not linked to ITIL 4. As long as the organization has a framework in ITSM, being called ITIL, being called something else, this will measure maturity and capabilities. So let me give you an example. We all know that the ITIL suggests guiding principles, 7 guiding principles: focus on value, keep it simple, and so on. If an organization decided not to use those ITIL principles, that organization is using another set of principles that they created, but as long as those principles work for them, people agree with them, they're being communicated, they are being embedded in the ways of working, then the maturity will be high for that particular component, guiding principles. So it means that the organization doesn't have to follow ITIL, doesn't have to adopt ITIL 100%. But as long as they're using guiding principles and they work for them, great. So what we're doing in this assessment is, as long as you have these 5 components in place, independently you're following ITIL 4, ITIL V3, or other framework, that's fine. As long as you have certain areas in place, you can have a high maturity level depending on the area. Now, similar to the capability assessment, as a result or as an output, the organization will get an indication, or sorry, a measure of the level of maturity for each of the 5 elements of the service value system, which you see here on the screen. And same way, we will have benchmark data available, so then the organizations can compare against their industry and the region organization for the same region and same industry. So you can compare to your competition in a sense. And as I said, it's not only a level that you get, level 2, level 3, you will get also a lot of guidance, a lot of improvement plan from the consultant who is conducting this assessment, as suggesting you what action, what else to do. Great, so that's capability and maturity assessment. And now, importantly, why capability and maturity assessment? Why I should go for this? Which is basically what are the benefits of these assessments. And yeah, as you can read on the screen, first of all, it will help organization identify areas of improvement. Sometimes organization, as I said, they didn't do an assessment in the past. They went straight into objectives. They find out that they cannot meet their objectives, but they don't know what's wrong in the organization. Maturity assessments, capability assessments will help them understand what is wrong, what it needs to be fixed in order to achieve those objectives. Another benefit is, of course, it will support all the continuous improvement planning, as I said, and it will help them understand what are the realistic and achievable objectives that they need to suggest. It will also allow organizations to understand where they have to put the money, where they have to invest, what areas, because by knowing what is performing well and not well, you might decide, well, we don't need much of this, let's put investment where we can get them more benefits. So yeah, by identifying what areas are performing better than others, it will help organization properly identify where they want to invest. And with the benchmark data, it will help, or it will allow organizations to compare against the other organizations. So going back to the continuous improvement model, as we said, the ITIL maturity model will help us understand where are we now, but the consultant will also help the organization suggest or set up those objectives. Because let me tell you, the objective is not to be level 5. The objective is not to be on top of the maturity, not at all. Sometimes for organizations, level 3 works okay, because it will be more expensive to get to level 4 than the benefits that they will get. So, and I always put the analogy of somebody who wants to do some running. For instance, myself, I do running from time to time, and I believe the way that I do it would be a level 3 because I just want to be healthy. And for me, that's okay. I don't want to do more. For me, level 5 will be I want to do some running because I want to become a marathon. I want to compete in marathons, and that's not my objective. For me, level 5 will be that, but I don't want to get to that because it will be a lot of work, a lot of time that I will need to do, and I have other priorities. So for me, level 3, which is basically going for a run twice a week, that's fine. I'm going to stick to that. That's what I need to maintain it. I can just give you an analogy of running with what a maturity level could be, but just to let you understand that level 5 is not always what you need to aim for. But a consultant will guide you through that. And also another part where maturity assessment will help organizations is to identify, did we get there? Once I put my objectives, when I put in place my plans, my action plans, did I achieve those objectives? Doing another assessment in 2-3 years time will help understand if they did. And that assessment doesn't have to be as big or with a lot of resources at the first one. You might want to do an assessment only with the areas that you identify that needed improvement. But definitely you want to do another assessment, even if a light touch in the future, just to make sure that you are improving, that you're getting where you want it to be. So this is ITIL Maturity Assessment. This is the why we created one. And I hope we provided a good overview of what you can expect from ITIL Maturity Assessment. If you're interested in this type of services, we have in Axelos something which is called the Axelos Consulting Partner. That's some consulting organizations that are partnering with Axelos to provide this type of services. In Germany, Serviu is one of them that you can get those services, and they will be happy to conduct maturity assessments for ITIL or ITSM, as well as in project program portfolio management. We also have a tool in that domain that is going to help consultants identify the level of maturity for projects, program, and portfolio. So if you're interested in this service, I'll encourage you to go to axelos.com. There is a big section there where you see consulting partner, and you will have a list of the partners operating in your country, and be in touch with one of them. They will be able to tell you more about the cost, the duration, and other details. Great, that's all from my end. I hope, yeah, half an hour exactly what I was expecting. So I'm happy to have any questions that you might have in the chat. So Marcus, back to you, and I hope you found the session useful.
Luis, thank you very much for the presentation and the introduction of the maturity model. I really have some questions here. You said that end-user organizations can use the model via accredited training consulting organizations. And here are the question, can we use also the tool without a consulting organization, for example, as self-assessment, as end-user organization?
Okay. For the ITIL Maturity Model, we didn't create a self-assessment. Reason why the following, because we want to make sure that somebody, first of all, we wanted to have a proper assessment in place. We didn't want to have a self-assessment, because in a self-assessment, it's basically the organization itself doing an assessment. Maybe not with the right people, maybe not understanding the questions correctly, maybe not understanding what the objective of the assessment, and that could lead to less accuracy. We had in the past, in our P23 model, the project program portfolio management, a self-assessment, and again, it's never as powerful as a full assessment conducted by a consultant, and also a consultant that is totally external from the organization. So a consultant who can actually go and review exactly that's happening or not, and it doesn't have that subjectivity of being part of the organization. So for this one, we don't have a self-assessment. We just want the organization to go to the full assessment, because in the full assessment, you will get an accurate measure of your level, but also the consultant will give you insights or action plans of what to do next. And that's for us the most valuable. Being level 3, level 4 without knowing what to do next, it doesn't create any value. So that's the main reason why we went to only with the full assessment and no self-assessment.
Okay. Then one question goes to the benchmarks, what you mentioned.
Sure.
You will have benchmarks in the future. In which time frame do you think are mature benchmarks available?
Oh, good question. And I don't want to commit to a date because the benchmark, the way that it works is the more assessments that are registered with us, the more data we'll have to create that benchmark. So I would say months, but I don't know exactly what pace. It could be in a matter of weeks. It could take a bit longer. Initially, might be available for certain regions where most of the assessments are happening. So, for instance, it's more likely that if you are in Germany, US, UK, you will see that benchmark data for your region than if you are in, I don't know, Mauritius or Kenya or another place where ITIL is not as popular as the other regions. So the more inputs, the more assessment being taken place, that's going to create the benchmark data. So we'll say some months. I don't want to commit because it doesn't depend on us. It depends on assessments happening in the marketplace.
Then there's one question which says there are other maturity models are available for ITIL, not from Axelos. Why do we need a new one?
Good point. And yeah, definitely. First of all, to clarify, you can see another maturity models that are ITSM models. Basically, a maturity model that is assessing ITSM in your organization. There is no ITIL maturity model apart from the one that Axos created. So if an organization is trying to sell or to tell you that this is an ITIL assessment, that's not the case because we haven't licensed anybody to provide to create an ITIL assessment. But I know some people, maybe by mistake, they might be offering that. And the reason why we came up with this is because we see in the marketplace that there are many ITSM or what I said, so-called ITIL assessments, that they have different ways of working, they have different metrics, different definition of the levels, and so on. So if you're a corporate and you do an assessment, ITSM assessment, let's call it that way, with an organization, their own ITSM assessment with an organization today, and in 3 years' time, you do it with a different organization, their own assessment, it might be not compatible or might have certain areas that are having some conflicts. So what we wanted to do is we wanted to have a standardized, a proper, a defined ITIL assessment in the marketplace. That's the one that we want the organization to refer to. And secondly, because we know that the benchmark data is key, and you cannot get benchmark data by having many maturity models out there. So that's why we wanted to come up with one, which is the Axos one, which is the official one. If somebody else is offering another ITSM, it's still valid because ITSM people can create the assessment ITSM, but there is no other ITIL maturity assessment. We do have a self-assessment for ITIL v3, but likely that's going to be discontinued because of the discontinuation of ITIL v3.
Okay, thanks. So the last one is only asking for the slides.
Yes.
Pat, you can send it to me and I can forward it to the delegates who likes to want to have the slides.
Not a problem.
Okay. Luis, thank you very much for especially in your personal situation of the last night and today that you not canceled this session and provide the time for us here and give us the honor that you do your presentation. It was very interesting, and if someone wants to connect you directly, I think you are findable via LinkedIn, for example, so that people can connect you also directly. Or if you have any questions to the maturity model, we are what you said, Serviu is certified as a consulting partner, so you can also come directly to us. Luis, yeah. Thank you very much. I will switch to German back now and have a good time. Take care. All the best for your family. And I think we can, because we are in the December now, I can wish you a very cool Christmas and next year.
Same for you and same for everybody who attended the session. Thank you very much. And as you said, you can connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm the only Luis Ribeiro, or at least the only one working for Axelos. But they can always go to you because you are one of our Axelos consulting partners, so you're in the best position to provide the guidance.
Great, thanks. Ja, zurück in Deutsch. Wie geht es jetzt weiter in unserer Session? Moment, so, hier bin ich auf meiner Präsentation. Ja, genau, wenn Sie natürlich Fragen dazu haben, können Sie uns gerne auch direkt ansprechen über unser Consulting. Hier ist so ein bisschen ein QR-Code, den man auch ganz gut abfotografieren kann. Ansonsten melden Sie sich einfach direkt bei uns. Was gibt das Programm heute noch her? Wir sind ja jetzt kurz vor der Mittagspause. Um 13 Uhr zum Beispiel macht mein Kollege Markus Wagner eine Präsentation zu Big Picture of ITIL 4. Das heißt, zeigt mal so die 4 existierenden neuen Modelle, wie die zusammenspielen. Ansonsten glaube ich auch noch eine ganze Menge interessante Sachen drin. Und heute Abend um 16 Uhr habe ich wieder einen Head-to-Head. Vielleicht haben Sie ja den gestern auch gesehen zum Thema digitale Workflows. Heute Abend werden wir uns in einem Interview unterhalten mit einem Spezialisten, wie denn der Service Desk der Zukunft aussehen wird. Also daher bleibt spannend und ich wünsche Ihnen noch einen schönen Nachmittag. Passen Sie gut auf sich auf. Vielleicht sehen wir uns ja in der einen oder anderen Session und bis demnächst. Dankeschön. Ciao.